I know and friends out there. I good friend Henry and so many nice regulars. So today we will learn a lesson from a comic strip. You will see. I don't know how many of you are familiar with this, but it's an interesting part of the Bhagavatam. And there is the lesson of the comic strip to be learned. So we'll get to that. First, we'll begin with an invocation. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, 10th canto, chapter 66, Pundraka, the false Vasudev. And Yanitvam asmak chinani mayodyad ibarsi satpata tavyakt mam tvam saranam nojedihi manabhavam. O Sattva, give up my personal symbols, which out of foolishness you now carry, and come to me for shelter. If you do not, then you must give me battle. So let me give some context to this. So, but first, a prayer, so I can get a brain. Om Gyana Tyana Gyana Gyana Shri Gurave Namaha. Pundraka was a powerful king living at the time of Krishna. And Pundraka had some delusions of grandeur. Some of you have met people that have delusions of grandeur. Some of you may have even had delusions of grandeur. I'm not asking for volunteers to come forth with that, but these things happen. And by the way, anybody who is not in their underwear and can turn on their video, please do, because I like to see the audience. I realize it's not always practical for everyone. I get that. I'd like to see who's there. So, and he self-identified as Vishnu. Now, Vishnu has certain symbols he carries, and he just identified himself as Vishnu. And he really thought he was God. I mean, really so. Now, many of you are in New York City, and if you go to Times Square, you'll see someone standing there, and they'll be telling you, I am God. I'm sure some of you have seen the people like that. I rarely go to New York and don't meet God. And before we get more into this story, I'd like to share with you a few stories of me meeting God. This might be of interest to you. We'll see. The Bhagavatam has stories of people claiming to be God, as we're doing with this story. This is not the only story like that. And in the 60s in America, and I'm going to tell a little story about that, there were many who claimed to be God. They were in different categories, like this Pundraka. For example, there was the hippie type who had one too many tabs of LSD. And they would walk around claiming to be God. Sometimes they'd come to programs and they'd confront Prabhupada that I'm God. And Prabhupada would challenge him, fine, can you lift this object over here? Because God can lift a whole gigantic mountain. Can you just lift this heavy object? Which, of course, they can't. So after reading the Gita, tell a little personal story, several times, not Prabhupada's, wasn't even published yet, but in the 60s, reading the Gita, being very attracted to something in India, I said, I have to go to India. The only way I will know who is real, what's real and what isn't in terms of this tradition is to go to the roots of it. I'll give some examples, and then I'll tell you my stories of meeting God. After Prabhupada was the first major guru from India, as we all know, to come to the West. Before him, Vivekananda had come, a few had come, done some things and left. No gigantic splashes. Prabhupada came with the right amount of devotion and the right timing and had the big splash. After Prabhupada, some entrepreneurs started coming. They realized that there was a gullible population that could believe almost anything. So one of them came, and he was 14 years old when he came, little chubby guy. I heard him speak once. And he spoke the Gita very well. I mean, he explained the Gita, you're not this body, blah, blah, blah. He could go into it. And then at the end, and he even gets to the conclusion, the Gita, Sarva Dharman Parityajya, just surrender to me. And then he tells who the me is, and he points at himself, I'm that person. And then his technique was very interesting. What he would do is he would rub your eyeballs. And he had this ability, and if you press your eyeballs in the right way, it gives you big flashes of white light. Oh, big flashes of white light if you rub your eyeballs in just the right way. Good morning, Brahmatirtha. And so gullible people would have their eyeballs rubbed by him, and next thing they know, they're seeing the white light, and they believe that he's God, and they found God. Now, so happens that I happen to know a little something about his history. I'll share it with you just to give a context. So he still has some followers around, I believe, but I'm not sure of that. In the 70s, I was working as an oil company, and I met a fellow, I met an Indian working for the company, and I started talking to him about Krishna. And I was out on assignment at the company headquarters out of state, so I was staying at a hotel. And I said to him, well, this is my devotional life. I get up in the morning, I offer arti, and then chant. And he didn't believe me. So the next day, thank God I didn't sleep in. The next day, I am offering arti, a little altar in my temple room, in the hotel room. First thing I do when I get to the hotel is I unplug the TV to avoid temptation so I can do devotional things. And next thing I know, about 6 in the morning, I see a head in the window watching me to see if I'm really doing that or not. Now, he told his friend what about this. This fellow never became a devotee. His friend, a very intelligent Brahmin from Dehradun, then started talking to me, and he became a wonderful devotee, and I saw him last week in Houston. He still is. Now, here's the inner story. He's from a small town, the same place this guru I was mentioning to you, who, when he was 14, came to America from the same town. When I found that out, I asked him, well, tell me the story on this guy. And he said, he is a carnival huckster. You know, carnival hucksters, people who go to a carnival and they trick you into this or that, or they have like a believe it or not museum. They just, they basically get your money by different means. And the whole family for generations were carnival hucksters. And they had learned the art of pressing on the eyeball and convincing fools that they now had great realizations. This is what we're dealing with the story of Pundraka. People can easily be fooled. And that's what went on. So this was one guru in America. And there were a lot of gurus coming to America during that time after Prabhupada. The New York Daily News, there every week, they had one centerfold of the latest guru to come to make fun of the latest guru. That's what they like doing. So when I went to India, I also wanted to go understand the Gita better. And then when you hear God's around the corner, you say, gets interesting, doesn't it? Maybe I'll get to meet God, because we don't have much philosophy. I didn't have much philosophy, didn't really know what was going on. Krishna somehow protected me. So I was in training in Patna, and there was a group there of yogis, and they were mostly Westerners. And they wore traditional Indian dress, but they obviously spoke English. They were Westerners. So I went to visit them. And I said, well, tell me about your movement. They said, well, our guru is God. I said, oh, this is very interesting. Who wouldn't want to meet God? That's kind of curious. I said, where is he? Oh, he's in prison because he was accused of politics. I said, well, I had known a little something then. Even Krishna's father was in jail. So, okay, I can live with that. What prison is he in? Well, he's in the prison hospital. Oh, what's wrong with him? Well, his hemorrhoids got so bad. I was thinking, this is God in the hospital with hemorrhoids? Knock that one off the list. And there was another one. I was in New Delhi, and I came across an American my age with short hair. Now, you never met in India at that time, that was like, say, 71. You never met in India an American, young, 22, with short hair. You just didn't do it. It was either hippies or, and the uniform of the hippies, in order to be a nonconformist, hippies must have had long hair. I used to have long hair. Now I just long for some hair, but that's a different matter. So I ran into a clean-cut American and said, wow, that's unusual. So I talked to him, what are you here for? He says, oh, I went on a spiritual journey. I read the Gita. I was trying to understand the inner workings of Gita. This is my thing. So let's go have lunch. And it seemed like a nice guy, a pious person. And he said, yeah, and I met my guru, and he's actually God, and he can make things appear, dust appear with his hands. And you probably know what I'm talking about. He has an afro, he's passed on, had an afro haircut. We'll leave names out. And South Indian guru, millions of followers. He still has many followers, claims he can do mystical things. I said to him, I met him, and this fellow, this American's telling me, and I became his personal secretary. I said, my God, you came to India. You met the person who understands the Gita, who can do mystical things, who has godly powers. Maybe it could be God, who knows? This is everything I came to India for. This is wonderful. By the way, what are you doing in Delhi? He says, I'm going home. I said, you came for this purpose. Now you're going home. Why would you be going home? He said, I got tired of him reaching into my pants. True story. Later, after he died, maybe, 10 years ago, the BBC did a whole expose on this so-called guru. And it turns out he did that. He was basically a pedophile. And that is well documented. So this is the kind of, but he has thousands of followers, millions of followers. This is the story we're dealing with in the Bhagavatam, where somebody can claim to be God. You may wonder, how is it people can follow someone like this? But they do. So now we'll get into the verses. Excuse a long buildup, but I wanted to put really in context what's going on in this chapter of the Bhagavatam. It's helpful to have a context. So, I'm going to read again. Sattva. So this is the messenger of Pundraka speaking to Krishna. Give up my personal symbols. In other words, Krishna has these symbols of Vishnu, which you now carry, and come to me for shelter. If you do not, then you must give me battle. And Sri Vidhanath Chakravarti again interprets Pundraka's words according to the inspiration of Saraswati, the goddess of learning. Out of foolishness, I have assumed an imitation conch shell, disc, lotus, and club, and you are maintaining these by allowing me to use them. You have not yet subdued me and gotten rid of these symbols. Please mercifully come and liberate me by forcing me to give them up. In other words, Pundraka inwardly is saying, I know I'm a cheater. I want, come fight me. And the next verse, we have two verses today. Sukadev Goswami said, King Ugrasena and other members of the assembly laughed loudly when they heard this vain boasting of an unintelligent Pundraka. Then a battle begins. Obviously, Pundraka dies. Pundraka's son then does a curse to try to kill Krishna, and Lord Shiva gives him this horrendous demon to scares the whatever's out of all the residents of Dwarka. Krishna doesn't even get up from the game he's playing and says, don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. But he was too busy playing the game. So he sends his suitor son Chakra to take care of it. So he doesn't even have to get up. And the demon is defeated, goes back to the town where he came from, back to Pundraka's son's town, because Pundraka is already dead. And of course, wipes out the whole town, because if you do a curse on someone and the curse doesn't work, it comes back on you. That's just the way of curses. Okay, now we have to get to the comic strip. We'll get to that momentarily. So what we're dealing with here is envy. And which of us doesn't have some envy in us? Krishna says in the Gita to Arjuna, I am giving you the secret. Why? Because you're not envious. So envy is the worst of emotions. But we all have some envy. If we didn't, frankly, we wouldn't be in this world. And this envy is serious. So when I was growing up, there was a comic strip. And this comic strip, Pogo, had a big impact on me. And they came up with a very famous saying. There was some general before the Civil War, he became President Harrison, and one of his commanders came up to him in a famous saying and said, we have met the enemy, and we've met the enemy, and I can't remember exactly, and we will defeat them or something. We have met the enemy, and they are gone. Yeah, I think that was the saying. So Pogo, they twisted this around, this famous saying from a battle, and made it into an amazing comic strip. I'll show it to you. We have met the enemy, and he is us. We have met the enemy, and he is us. So I promised you a comic strip, and I gave you a comic strip. And when I read that as a child, maybe, I don't know, I was 10 years old or something. It was quite well known in my generation. Others see somebody, Jamuna Jaya, has quoted it. And it really struck me because the enemy is us. Sometimes we always want to blame others for our suffering. All the time we want to blame who is the cause of our suffering. The spiritual solution is we've met the enemy. It's us. We are the cause of our own suffering. That's very, very hard to accept. I mean, one time I had a broken leg in 5 places. It was on Bhakti Vinod's appearance day. Somehow convinced Bhakti Vinod saved me. It was a terrible industrial type accident. And so it was painful. It was difficult. Somehow or other, by the grace of Bhakti Vinod, because I was reading about him, thinking about him that day, and Bhakti Vinod is very powerful, as we all know, I understood that what's happening to me has a purpose and a reason, and it's for my benefit. I don't always think like that. Why me? Why me? So, that's the envy in me. But when I understand that Krishna is always kind. A friend of mine, very dear friend, his wife died a most tragic death. I won't go into details, but most tragic death. And he's a senior leading, one of the most intelligent devotees I know. And we're very close. So I called him up. I said, "Oh my God, your wife has died this tragic death, and my heart's broken." And the first words out of his mouth shocked me. To this day, it still shocks me. And the first words out of his mouth were, "Krishna is kind." This is a very, very advanced devotee. How, during the midst of a terrible tragedy, he could understand that Krishna is kind. That is deep, deep realization. And he understood whatever difficulties we have, we actually, it's what we must go through for this or that reason. Sometimes a reason is very clear now, sometimes a reason's very clear later, but there always is a reason. So these are some of the lessons we're getting from the story of Pundraka. Now, we may see it's odd. Someone just says, "I am Vishnu." And when we think of that, the first thought that comes to my mind is the crazies at 42nd Street who are walking around with some kind of poster board saying, "I am God." But it's not just those crazies. It's all of us that think at some time or other, I'm the controller, I'm God, I'm the most important. How do we get rid of envy? There's only one way. Years and years ago, about 1982, I was at a class, and the class was given by none other than Rameshwar Prabhu. He was a very, very good speaker. I know he speaks at the Bhakti Center. And I still remember the class quite well because he was asked the question, said, the question says, sometimes I find I have some envy. What do I do about it? What do I do about when I have some envy? And he gave the answer, and it's so simple. It works so well. Let's say I am envious of Jamuna Jaya. We'll pick that. We'll pick a person. What would I do? Because Jamuna Jaya can, so many good qualities, can do so many abilities that I don't have. For example, you never hear me singing before class because when I start singing, people just don't walk, they run. I have the singing ability of a constipated frog. Somehow or other, figure last life, I don't know what I did, who I mocked, or on a kirtan party somewheres, but I was given that lack of ability. So let's say I'm envious of someone who can sing or someone who can dance or so many things I can't do. How do I deal with that envy? So Rameshwar gave such a simple answer. You simply do the hardest thing on earth. You serve that person. Because our ultimate position is to be a servant. That's the ultimate test. I'm envious of someone. Imagine if in our society, every time we were envious of someone, we felt in our heart, we know our hearts, we know what's going on, said, I'm going to go serve that person. I'm going to bring that person a plate of maha. Whatever it is, I'm going to do something. That is the cure for the envy. What Pundraka needed to do, if Pundraka had a good spiritual mentor, he would have gone to Dwarka, said, Krishna, I'm very envious of you. So here, I'm bringing you this gift. I want to wash your feet. Immediately, the envy would be washed away. Now, of course, Pundraka, okay, I'll be a spoiler and tell you what happens. He is killed by Krishna, but he was always thinking of Krishna. So naturally, he was liberated. In the Mahabharata, there'll be more details of these stories because there's a backstory. There's always a backstory of who he was in prior life, how he ended up here, and all. I don't know well enough the details of the backstory, so I'm not going to take a chance of sharing that. Okay, with that, I promised I'd stop on time for questions. So I'm going to stop here and see, are there any questions on these issues of this Bhagavatam story, the issue of envy? We'll start off for questions about what we're talking about. If there are none, we can do more general questions on what is it you want to know? Maybe I know the answer, maybe not. I have half a century of devotional service, so I know some answers. I certainly don't know them all. So somebody want to go into the chat or raise their hand or unmute? Going once. Aha. Ananda Mandri.
Yes, Hare Krishna Prabhu. Thank you so much for your class. I first want to reflect what I heard, and then I want to ask a question that comes from it.
Thank you.
Can you hear me well?
Yes, I can.
So yeah, I heard you share a lot of stories about, people who are posing themselves to have some realization that they in fact don't, or outward, like straight out, just want to cheat others, which is one of the propensities. And the question that comes from that for me is, knowing that this world is, and this is, again, one of our four defects, like this world is full of others who also want to cheat, and we may want to cheat ourselves. How do we, as devotees, both perceive the best and remain open-hearted, as part of the process is to continue to melt the heart and soften it, and simultaneously preserve that healthy sense of cynicism, or maybe even just like doubt about other people's intentions or their actions?
Well, you've asked a very insightful question. And there are, I think, two parts to answering. Once Prabhupada was asked, how do you be sincere? And the answer is very simple. Just be sincere. Just a baseline. So once we're sincere, it doesn't mean be foolish. And there was sometimes we can be foolish too, in that we'll let someone get away with things that we shouldn't. So we have to consider what our own role is. if our own role is a manager, or a protector of a family, or whatever role, and somebody is attacking, we might have to defend. It's not that we're going to go serve that person, but we have to be sincere in that we're not doing it out of envy. We're doing it out of duty. We don't defend ourselves out of anger. We may use our anger to protect someone. Sometimes I was on an airplane and sitting in the first row of the airplane on the way to Los Angeles, and somebody tried to hijack the airplane and break into the cockpit. Now, this really happened. And it was before 9/11, it was 96. And so the cockpit doors were not reinforced. So he kicked in the bottom half of the cockpit door. And we had started descending to LA. If he had made it into the cockpit, we would have all died. Because there's a fight in the cockpit when you're going down, we would have all died. Fortunately, there was an extra pilot, big guy, sitting in the jump seat by the door. So he had his shoulder against the door and had taken out the emergency axe. He was ready to swing it. But the door didn't open all the way. And then the fellow attacked the flight attendant. It was somebody on a bad drug trip, but he claimed he had a bomb. And he poured the coffee, the scalding coffee, over the arm of the flight attendant. So even though I'm a little guy, I jumped out of the seat to go and protect the flight attendant. And we made an emergency landing, and it worked out okay. And she wasn't hurt more, and guy was arrested, and all this went on. Now, it was a very dramatic incident for me because I didn't have a chance to think about what I would do. I was angry. A flight attendant was being attacked, trying to kill us all. Sometimes we have to respond that way. We can think, oh, was I envious to go and, confront this person? Or no, I wasn't. I was doing my duty. I had a natural anger I ought to have. And I had to, government flew me back to California later to testify at the trial. So sometimes we may have to act in very strong ways because we have a sense of duty. But generally, Prabhupada used to put it this way: a lion on the prowl and a lamb at home. And we're among ourselves, among the devotees, among our own families, where these intimate situations. Prabhupada expected us to behave like ladies and gentlemen with each other, very gentle. But when it comes time, there was one, Balavanta tells me this amazing story. He went to hear some yogi speak with this young devotee, had just joined a matter of weeks. Balavanta was senior man, and he went, and this yogi started speaking to a large audience. And then he started attacking Prabhupada. He saw there were some devotees in the audience saying nasty things about Prabhupada. And Balavanta says, what should I do? He says, I should just leave the audience, just leave this room. And instead, the devotee, that young devotee had been just weeks in the movement, stood up, yelled at the guy on the stage, you cannot say that about my guru. You take the words back. You do that right now. Started marching to the stage. And the bogus yogi on the stage took the words back and apologized. So was that young devotee acting out of envy? No. He was doing his duty. But if somebody does something I don't like, I'm driving New York and somebody cuts me off, and next thing I know, I cut them off, that's envy in my heart. That's not acting in a proper way. That road rage is just envy. So we have to distinguish it. I'm not sure if I answered your question or a different question.
I think you answered your own way. I do want to reflect what I heard, which is how important it is to be aware of what's in our hearts when we are acting, and to cultivate that very sincere sense of honesty of ourselves, of where we are coming from. And I also want to acknowledge that likely there are sometimes multiple layers of the intentions or what's going on within us. And so even that subtlety is there.
And that's confirmed in the Gita, because Krishna, by the 13th chapter of the Gita, Krishna is saying, okay, Arjuna, now I'm going to get into it with you and show you the modes of nature. I'm going to show you the multiple layers in your heart. What's ignorance? What's passion? What's goodness? And he spends chapters of the Gita going over just what you're talking about, trying to understand the multiple layers in the heart. So that's a very good point you made. Thank you. Next hand up, I see Brahmatirtha.
Yes, Prabhu. Thank you, BT, Prabhu. I just, when I get that question, I usually also say basically what you said, that, what is it? Generally assume good intentions. Like you said, a lamb at home,
Yeah.
and with the word underscoring generally, because there are, unfortunately, a minority of, a vast minority of, a small minority of people who will try to take advantage of us. But in devotional relationships, generally assume good intentions instead of assuming the negative. And then your favorite president once said, trust but verify. So that's also a nice way to answer that question.
Very good. Thank you very much. Yeah, we don't want to be naive and foolish. At the same time, we don't want to be total cynics. And it's hard to walk the middle road. What I'm advocating is we have to be more Buddha-like at times. By that, I mean the middle road. And Krishna advocates in the Gita. For example, he says, don't eat too much. Then he says, don't eat too little. Don't sleep too much. Don't sleep too little. And so we somehow have to be like the three bears and find the porridge that's just the right temperature. So we're going for the right porridge. Gauranga Leela.
Not the three monkeys. See no evil, hear no.
Oh, yeah.
So what are the signs? Wonderful class. So what are the signs of envy and jealousy?
Well, that's a nice question. What are the signs? I'm going to ask Raja Bihari to answer that one.
There's a slight difference between envy and jealousy, right, PT?
Yes, yes. I just recently had a debate on it, which is worse. And the dictionary definitions are a little convoluted. I personally say envy is worse. Jealousy means I'd like what you have. Envy means I wish you didn't have what you have. Did I get that right, Raja Bihari?
Yeah.
How I view it. There's some question on going back to dictionary, but generally in the movement, we do it that way. Envy is, I'm so sorry you have your good fortune. And jealousy is, I wish I had your good fortune. What are the signs of it? Just that I wish I had something I don't have, that I'm coveting. One of the 10 commandments from the Judeo-Christian tradition is don't covet your neighbor's property. In other words, don't be envious. It goes back to very, very basic. If Gauranga Leela, at times you feel any envy or jealousy, just know you're normal. We're going to feel it. And the thing is, what's the difference between us and someone else? The difference might be we're aware, oh, that's envy, that's jealousy, and then I can deal with it. So the key is being aware of it. And why do we learn these lessons about, why do we have a whole story here about Pundraka trying to pretend he's Vishnu? These are lessons for us. Because as I showed you in the Pogo cartoon, we have met the enemy. It's us. And if we have that deep spiritual realization, I was like 10 or 12 years old when I saw that, and believe it or not, that comic strip was deep spiritual realization for me. I didn't quite pick it all up then. If we have that, it's very powerful. It's good awareness. I hope that answered your question, Gauranga Leela.
Yeah, like in people, sometimes they're also envious or jealous. Like, how do we know if they're like envious and jealous?
Say that last part again.
So sometimes people are like around you are envious and jealous. So how do we know if they're envious and jealous?
How do we know if they're envy or jealous? Oh, you can see it right in their face. People who are envious and jealous, their face gets contorted all the time. You can see it right away. Prabhupada used to say the face is a mirror of the mind. So it's an art. And as we get rid of our own jealousy and envy in our heart, then we can easily see how that person's acting. And we know how to then respond to that person in the best way for them. And sometimes it's with kindness and sometimes it's otherwise. But we're doing it not out of envy or jealousy in our heart. We're doing it in their interest. Sometimes Prabhupada's, like for example, a servant would make a huge mess and Prabhupada would say, oh, that's okay. And sometimes he chastised them depending on what they needed for their own benefit. But Prabhupada was always doing it for their own benefit. One quality about Prabhupada that was very interesting, he never got angry for any, except for a moment. I mean, somebody did something really stupid. He had to respond that way to teach him, but it never lasted. It was gone immediately. He did it for that person's benefit. If I get angry at someone and the anger sticks, that's me. That's with me. I've met the enemy, then it's me. But if somebody's trying to hijack a plane and I'm angry at that and have to act on it, no, that's a sense of duty. By the way,
Brahmatirtha Prabhu,
I did get 100,000 miles from the airline for helping him out.
Brahmatirtha Prabhu, were Srila Prabhupada's god brothers envious of his success in the West? And how did he handle his relationship with his god brothers?
I was once in Mayapur with Prabhupada, and his god brothers were there, and they're kind of yelling at him. How could you call yourself Prabhupada? Bhakti Siddhanta is Prabhupada. So Prabhupada grabbed a piece of his stationery and said, look at it. And says, Tridanda Goswami, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, never said Prabhupada. He says, I never called myself Prabhupada. My disciples did. And then Malati walks in the room. And he says, I'm paraphrasing now, but he says, Malati, she would give her right arm for me, and I would give my right arm for her. And that was love. So sometimes some of Prabhupada's godbrothers were clearly envious of his success. Some of his godbrothers praised his success. Some of his godbrothers supported him in every way. And one of his godbrothers famously cooked for Prabhupada for years. So we can't make godbrothers a homogeneous group. There were some of them who were very advanced, some of them who maybe had their own envy and jealousy at the time. Prabhupada dealt with them accordingly. The first time I saw Prabhupada's godbrothers, they visited Mayapur in 72. And a delegation came in. And even though hardly had any chairs, Prabhupada immediately gathered whatever chairs there were. There were no buildings in Mayapur. We just had tents. And gathered whatever chairs there were and made sure his godbrothers were seated before he would take a seat. So Prabhupada understood etiquette, understood how to give respect. I'm a big fan of Aretha Franklin. You all know her song, R-E-S-P-E-C-T, respect. And that's the key to getting rid of the envy and jealousy that we have in our heart. I think Gauranga Lila, you had one last question because we are at the end now.
During the afterglow, right now it's darshan. We can't talk over Radha Muladhar.
No, we can't. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Brahmatirtha Prabhu. Thank you. Wonderful class. Thank you so much. Turn on your cameras, please. If you can. especially if you're introverted. Turn on your camera. Jai Shri Shri Radha Muridhar Ki Jai. Shri Gaur Chandra Ki Jai. Brahmatirtha Prabhu Ki Jai. So much good ideas and helpful insights to meditate on from Brahmatirtha Prabhu. Okay, Rajvihari left. Brahmatirtha Prabhu left. Okay. All right. Okay, good thing Bhima Prabhu is here. He's the next in the chain of command. Grangalila, did you have all your questions answered perfectly? Great, great. Yeah. You know who Brahmatirtha Prabhu is? He's a disciple of Srila Prabhupada, and there's this book. It's called Perfect Questions, Perfect Answers. So Brahmatirtha Prabhu was that young man who was interviewing Srila Prabhupada. So it was his questions that made it to the book, Perfect Questions, Perfect Answers. So he's Srila Prabhupada's co-author. That's a unique position in our movement. Yeah, so we're very fortunate that we have his association and can ask a question like you're doing, Grangalila. Thank you. Okay. Would anyone like to reflect, maybe, or share a realization? If not, we'll take the most introverted person on this call and have them speak. Who's the most introverted? Raise your hand. You know, for years, on, Galila. What's that?
Bhima should go first.
Bhima? But he's not introverted. He's the opposite of.
So, does that matter?
Okay, Bhima, would you like to go? You know, for years I was thinking I was introverted and shy until I started doing. What's that?
What is introverted?
Introverted means shy.
Oh.
Yeah, and extroverted means somebody who likes to be around people. Yeah. So I was saying for years I was thinking I was an introvert up until I started doing service. And then, well, when you're doing service, we step out of our comfort zone and we have no idea what we're capable of. I realized I was such a fool. Vasudev Prabhu had to chastise me. He said, those jokes, come on, Prabhu, this is not a comedy show. You have to slow down. Yeah, true story. So we never know what we're capable of until we try. I'm not saying that I'm capable. I'm just saying that I'm foolish, but it's always good. It's always good to try things out.
This is indeed a comedy show.
What's that?
This is indeed a comedy show.
Yeah, it is a comedy show. Yeah. I'll tell Vasudevi that you said that.
Yeah, tell him, please.
All glories to Vasudev. Yeah, somebody has to hold the line. It's all important. All those things are important. So you wanted to share a reflection, Bhima Prabhu? Are you envious of somebody?
Oh, everything.
I'm envious of your beard.
Krishna. Especially Krishna. Yeah. I guess all I can say is that for those who are more simple, that Prabhupada always was fond of saying, when a devotee or when a disciple gets a clue, and that means Krishna leaves clues all about us, all around us. And it's hard to be envious or jealous or in illusion or ever think to be deluded by a jiva, a tiny little speck in this world, that they are God. These things pass away with a little bit of common sense, a little bit of a clue. Krishna goes over the fact that this is a yantra, this is a machine we're in. It's a wonderful machine, the body, but it also is a terrible machine in the sense that it's full of suffering vis-a-vis the fact of birth, death, old age, and disease. So we get a clue and we have this sort of humble resignation of what we truly are in this world, which is, as the song says, dust in the wind. So these are very simple things.
I just listened to it yesterday.
Yeah.
Just yesterday. Yeah, Krishna Miracle.
Isn't it great?
Yeah.
It's so Krishna conscious. You know what I mean? It's a beautiful song, Dust in the Wind. All we are is dust in the wind. And when we see that, we understand first and foremost that, there's nothing for us to be envious of or jealous of in this world. And then second of all, of course, is to understand that we need to be true to ourselves. We may have desires that are not necessarily cohesive. In fact, the reason why we struggle with advancement in purity is because of desire and desire only. Prabhupada said you can become a pure devotee in 1 second. 1 minute, he said. 1 minute you can become pure enough to go back to Godhead. But we really don't desire. So ultimately, we just come to an understanding of who we truly are. And if we understand who we truly are and what our desires really are, we then try to dovetail our desires in Krishna's service, whether that be austerity or being a Vaishya, earning a lot of money, being austere and learned like a Brahmin, being bold and taking the lead like a Kshatriya, or being humble and serving everyone like a Sudra. We take these desires and we use them in Krishna's service. That's why Prabhupada over and over again, the most repeated phrase in Prabhupada's books and in his lectures are the two words devotional service, because everything else becomes clear if you can just find yourself engaged in service, and then Krishna all of a sudden shines that light, shining the light, the lantern of knowledge from within. These things become revealed. So in regards to jealous and envy and anger and lust, we just have to keep reminding ourselves that this is a comedy show. This is a dream. Lord Chaitanya says, Jeev Jago, and you become aloof or detached from the things, the pullings and the pushings of this world, and you can let go. And then once you let go of the things of this world, the pushings, the urges that the world would have us deluded into following, which includes jealousy and envy, once we let go of those things, it's very easy to hold on to the Vaishnavas and thusly holding on to Krishna himself. Anyways, that's
Thank you, Bhima Prabhu.
what
There's
I
a
heard.
follow-up
Hare
question
Krishna.
to that. It's a follow-up question. Why is there a murti or a figure of Srila Prabhupada in every temple Bhava Prabhu goes to?
Is
Bhima?
anybody going to answer that?
No, it's for you. You're the senior devotee here on the call. Well, we have Adi Purusha Prabhu and Das. If Adi wants to answer that,
Let Adi answer.
why is there a murti of Prabhupada everywhere, in every temple? Unmute yourself, Adi Purusha Prabhu. Unmute. You're muted. Das, help him unmute. Oh,
Hare
there you go.
Krishna. What was the question?
Why is there a murti of Srila Prabhupada in every temple?
Because we love him.
Keep going, keep going. Keep going until Bhava
Oh,
Prabhu
the
smiles.
class is perfect. Everything's been said already. We can repeat, we can reflect that envy is a disease condition, that there's another quality of life, and there's a way to go from the disease condition to the healed condition of being a loving being. And like Bhima said, devotional service, the lotus feet of the spiritual master is the only way to obtain pure devotional service. So we take shelter. In the envious condition, we're competing for prominence. So in this world, everyone in one sense is competing. But the spiritual world is different because Krishna is in the center. And our spiritual master is representing Krishna. So if we're trying to please him, we're trying to follow his instructions, if we're obedient to him, we're bowing down to him, then we become purified and get our normal condition as a loving being, right?
So Adi, tie that in with why there are tea in every temple of Prabhupada. Tie what you just said in with why is there a three-dimensional representation of Prabhupada within every temple?
Why not? Doesn't seem like a very deep question. Certainly, he's our guru, he's our teacher. And of course, he has empowered other people to act in that capacity.
Does that mean that Srila Prabhupada is God or something like that?
Is a representative of God.
Oh, good.
That's
Good.
right.
I believe it. Good.
All right,
That's
I
right.
have a call coming in here.
It's okay.
Oh, he said forget it. Okay.
But there are a lot of representatives. There are a lot of representatives of God. So who is the next in line, and why does it stop at Prabhupada? That's the
great question.
That because Prabhupada has been passed on for how long? So who is the next person, and why does it say that? Like when in the beginning prayers it says his virtues have been
Listen to him and
sung in the
you
Bhagavad
answer.
Gita,
He's asking a good
and then
question. You want to talk?
he will be he will be our
Adi, stop talking.
Can't hear
spiritual
you.
master on life after life.
He's asking an important question.
Adi, you interrupted Bhava.
I'm sorry. Das started talking while he was talking.
Das, please don't talk.
What
Bhava
I'm saying,
Prabhu.
when they say that, like when they say that Prabhupada is, they sing of his graces in the Bhagavatam, and then they say like he will be our spiritual master birth after birth. Why is it stop with him?
It doesn't.
Why is it not?
It
But if
doesn't.
it says he'll be our spiritual master in birth after birth,
Guru is Krishna, is Krishna's representative, and different people serve in that capacity. It's not that, and everyone would, who wants to have access to the Sampradaya, Krishna will provide someone. And Prabhupada asked all of us to act in that capacity. It doesn't stop with Prabhupada. Some people say that stops with Prabhupada. And what that means is they think Prabhupada is not capable of instructing and empowering anyone else to do what he did. Suppose you have an apple tree and the apples that fall from that tree don't make a new apple tree. Then it's dead. Something wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with Prabhupada. He served perfectly, set a perfect example, and asked us to follow that. If you take a candle that's lit and you light another candle, that candle begins giving off heat and light. And that candle is fully capable of lighting 1,000 other candles. But each of us has the responsibility and the choice to say, Krishna, I really want someone worthy of my complete trust and obedience. And when the disciple is ready, the guru appears in our life. When Prabhupada was with one of his, a couple who were his disciples, and he said, give this to your son. They had their son there, and he wanted to give the son $5. I actually saw this. And they said, Prabhupada, he's your guru. You're his guru. You can't give him anything. He said, no, he has to find his own guru. I'm your guru. When he's ready for shelter and obedience and instruction, Krishna will provide someone to act in that capacity for him. People who said it's all over with Prabhupada, people who do say that, of course, imagine you go to the store to get a Father's Day card, right? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I can hear you, but yeah.
And the Father's Day card says world's best father, right? You ever see that?
Yeah.
Okay, so the Father's Day card says world's best father. So you take that card, but underneath that card, there's another card that says world's best father, right? So everyone should feel like that my guru is nobody like him. This is a world's best representative of Krishna. Every person should feel like that, but everyone can feel like that. And even if though Krishna manifests, don't limit Krishna. Krishna can manifest somebody to give you shelter if you want it. Or if you want an excuse not to surrender, Krishna will give you that.
I don't think that's actually what I was asking, though. What I'm asking is, why is there the Murti and then there's no one else represented after that? Because I thought it was supposed to be a line of succession in the gurus. You understand what I'm saying?
Good question. If you look at the altar, the girl who dressed the deities today, she puts a picture of her spiritual master there. She's approaching Prabhupada through her spiritual master. But it'd be ridiculous to try to put 75 different murtis in a temple. Prabhupada is our great-great-grandfather guru. He's my personal spiritual master. But for other people, he's their grandfather. And it looks like she's asking a good question, as usual.
So the reason why is because Prabhupada's disciples could not bear the separation from Prabhupada. So they put the Murti of Prabhupada to remind them that Guru is always with them. Something about the succession, I think it's because since Krishna has empowered Prabhupada with this knowledge, nobody else can be like on his level, like to do like he has went through so many challenges. Like he had 2 heart attacks, he had to give up his family. Who would do such a thing like in this age? What kind of person would do that? And also, Prabhupada has empowered other his disciples also to give this knowledge to you, basically.
Thank you, Grangalila. Yeah, the deities are there in the temple and murtis are there because Krishna is helping us serve, helping us see them. Sometimes we cannot acknowledge a guru's presence in our life. So therefore, when we go to the temple, we see the murti or we see the deities, we see Krishna with our material eyes, so to speak. That's the purpose of the deity, so we can train our eyes to see Krishna. And that's where we start. And then Srila Prabhupada can work in our life through other people. He can come in a dream. Murti is not the only way Srila Prabhupada is working in our life. He can work through another person. I can tell that Srila Prabhupada is talking to me through Adipurusha Prabhu, big time. Srila Prabhupada is shining through Adipurusha Prabhu's character. Srila Prabhupada is shining through Gauranga Lila's question. It's all Srila Prabhupada's mercy. He is the guru. And, technicalities are there. He has disciples and they have their own disciples. Those are organizational kind of external aspects of the guru. But the guru is one. It's all stemming from Balaram, from Krishna ultimately, from Balaram. And then Srila Prabhupada is our grandfather guru. Okay. Yeah, and to be honest, we need somebody a little bit more qualified than us to answer that question properly. So we're going to wait until we have the next speaker, and then we can ask that question. It's a great question, Prabhu. Yeah.
Prabhu?
Is that Bhima Prabhu?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to reiterate what has already been said. Adi mentioned it, Gauranga Lila mentioned it, and that is, first of all, we do have the pictures of the previous gurus. Then we have Prabhupada, because he's most present before us, and Bhagavatam class is given from Prabhupada's books. But then we also, and I'm just repeating, and then we also have whoever's doing the puja of the day, who's ever being the pujari, has the picture of their intimate guru on the altar. So guru, the lineage is going on. We look to the path. We also, Prabhupada, when he did his translations, he was constantly referring back, not only to Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati, but to Bhakti Vinod and Chakravarti Thakur, Lord Chaitanya himself. Lord Chaitanya took a guru. So this idea that just because Prabhupada's Murti is the largest presence is only by virtue of perspective, and that it is true, Bob, that we are constantly looking backwards and forward. We are all here today. Even Gauranga Lila, when she's speaking so sincerely, we listen, as Ananda Bihari said, as if it's Krishna speaking and telling us something. So we'll always have our ears and eyes peeled for Guru at every moment. And we recognize that Guru at every moment because it resonates with what we have read. It resonates with what we have learned from our own Guru. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Bhima Prabhu. Yeah, when we read the Bhagavatam, we acquire the vision, the divine vision, and we can see Krishna, we can see Guru. If we don't read, if we don't do anything, then we won't see anything. So
the reason why I'm just curious, because through the traditions, and there's Lord Chaitanya, there's all different people, and you know what I mean. And then there's and I don't have anything against Srila Prabhupada. I think he's great, and I think that he brought all this knowledge to us and everything like that. I just was wondering how it stops with such a large manifestation of him versus like the linear guru.
Yeah, let me ask Vasudev Prabhu, let me ask somebody so we can have a proper. This is a deep question. It requires some research, but we know Srila Prabhupada is our founder Acharya of this particular lineage movement. So therefore,
I have
hence
an
the
idea how you
humility.
can find out.
Yeah.
If you have
Well,
a
because
guru, if you
I'm
have
sorry,
a
you're
guru,
speaking to me.
ask him the question to your guru if you have one, or you can ask any guru so that they could answer the question, because like
That's why I'm here asking you. I'm asking all of you.
Thank you,
oh,
Baba.
I'm not a
Thank you.
guru.
We will do our homework, Baba. We will explore that together. It's a great question.
You should bring to Prabhupada and ask him the question so that he could answer.
Yeah, when you go to bed, Baba, try to see Prabhupada in your dream and say, Prabhupada, your Murti is so wonderful. It helps me remember you. Please give me some understanding for that.
I doubt in my condition I'm going anywhere near any of those places.
Yeah, our condition may be this or that, but Srila Prabhupada is great. His mercy is reaching.
I'll do it in my brain.
Yeah, do it in your brain. Yeah, wherever. Srila Prabhupada can come meet you wherever you're at. That's the Acharya. That's what Acharya is. Okay, let's take one more. Well, thank you, Baba. Thank you. Let's take one more reflection and wrap it up. Rangalila, why don't you be the finisher? Say something uplifting. Finish off the class.
You're amazing, and all your questions are the most wonderful.
Thank you. Okay, you are amazing and wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Prabhujinis, YouTube listeners. We love you. We need you. Come again tomorrow to explore the beauty of bhakti.